Hi there. This is the Look-See for May 2024. The Look-See, as you know, is a combination of news, commentary, and a bit of clairvoyant perspective assessment in order to keep a finger on the pulse of what's happening in the world. So, these are all the things that I think we would do well to think deeply about or find ways around them. So the things that came up this month ranged across a pretty broad spectrum of topics, some of them really quite interesting, others quite unsettling. So there was something of I think the major focus as I was looking at what actually did I write down was technology and dreams. So let's begin. Number one, I was traveling really for most of April, and I didn't have much time to watch what was going on in the world, but that opened up the time and the space for a few moments of insight to come to me and to like arrange themselves in surprising ways. One of those moments was spending a few days with a small group of people that included Lloyd Brunson of the Brunson brothers and a call for 107. What I saw in those discussions that we had was Lloyd's deep, deep love for the Constitution and his frustration with the current administration's failure to honor it, uphold it, and live by it. He understands at a deep level how important this one document is for us, for the future of the US. It's there to speak to and for all of us. Loy is being encouraged to continue by Juan and others because the Constitution is so critical. The Brunson brothers' lawsuits have not been voided nor lost. They've been put on a shelf for retrieval later. And in the conversation with Juan, I had the distinct impression that he and those he is working with have plans for these lawsuits. More than once, I have seen that even if the US breaks up, everybody clings to the Constitution and uses it as their basic reorganizing document. Different regions may add a thing or two, but no one is willing to let go of that document. Number two, we the people and those who stand for honest government and justice are closing in slowly, inch by inch, on the voting fiasco that was the 2020 election. When they say the wheels of justice grind slowly, they aren't kidding. But boy, are they grinding now. I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you to all of those who have kept moving those wheels forward and who have the skills, the tools, and the connections to counter that kind of corruption. Number three, there have been a gazillion warnings that the economic system is going down, and it is. But the economic collapse looks more like an economic creep that moves relentlessly, silently forward, one bank at a time, until all the small and mid sized banks are gobbled up. This leaves very few options for us, the population. It's the big banks or nothing. The deep state is trying to keep the economy rolling or at least give the appearance that it's working until the election. Be aware that the deep state just prides itself on its ability to roll with the punches. In other words, they are playing a much more dynamic game than most people think they are. They keep their eyes on the goal and they set things in motion. things that go in the direction that they want to go. And then they watch reactions and results like a hawk, making phone calls and pulling strings to force those under their control to respond in ways that counter unwanted reactions or stir up more chaos in the population. The bottom line is that deep state thinking is not settled. So we should not settle into any rutted ideas either. They play with different financial scenarios and their outcomes regularly, and we should be doing the same thing. They may have a preferred outcome, but that is not the only outcome they are prepared for. And we should have our prepared outcome, but be prepared for everything. At this time, they're still gambling that if they can keep the economy rolling until after the election, they will be able to do whatever they want because they plan to win. They intend to do whatever it takes to declare winning. So keeping things rolling means making the collapse look more like this slowly creeping downfall of smaller banks here and there. While watching all of this unfold, the message to us is be watching for things to change and then put your energy behind those changes that are going in the direction you want. Number 4, sales of a lot of things are slowly and consistently going down because people are only buying necessities. This is linked to the fact that jobs are slowly and consistently being ended because of AI, robotics, technology, and a host of financial factors. None of them very good. I did a little research to see if anyone was laying off large numbers of people and found that Wayfair, Macy's, UPS, Google, Salesforce, Citi, Amazon, eBay, BlackRock, Sports Illustrated, nurses, doctors, lawyers, teachers, trucking, logistics, real estate agents, tech workers, and construction workers. In fact, millions are being let go. What will we do with all those new migrants looking for jobs that no longer exist? People see quite clearly that it's time to take care of themselves in a whole new way. And that includes not buying a lot of junk they used to spend money on. Many of us are changing on a daily basis and stepping back to watch and wait and see what unfolds. And I think that's wise. Number 5. One of the things that's unfolding is the result of what Biden did in erasing student loan debt. This single act has planted the idea in people's minds that debt can simply be erased just by changing your mind about what's owed. This reveals the truth behind all debt based fiat systems. It's really just a game like Monopoly, a game with rules. What? You break those rules, and there will be consequences in the real world. And in this case, the people who get hurt may be the people running the financial sector. When you make debt disappear into thin air, you teach people that the game is not real. Can I say that again? When you make debt disappear into thin air, you teach people that the game is not real. The rules can be broken and the game can come to an end. Who's going to call that end? Us or them? When you put a cap on late fees for credit cards and overdraft fees on bank accounts, you rubber stamp the message that it's just a game. The credit card companies will then set lower card limits, and that slows the economy. The banks will not be as willing to make loans, which also slows the entire system. Why? Because it's a debt based system that relies on creating ever greater debt that grows to infinity and then collapses. The red flag that began waving with Biden's erasure of student debt is that they are stepping along in their plan to collapse the system and introduce CBDCs. Be watching. Number 6. Staying with the theme of money, I have to ask, what is the spirit of money? What does the spirit of trade look, sound, and feel like in a 5D world? Did you ever think about that? Money does not exist in many worlds, but trade exists almost everywhere. Where money is in use, it's not the most important thing in life. People don't accumulate it. However, it is part of the give and take of life in some worlds. And the people there have a different attitude toward it. They work on the principle that all things are conscious, including the money, and they say that gold, silver, and other forms of money seek to expand their ability to serve and secure many people. To do this, the gold and silver need willing partners. That's us. To act in alignment with the intent of the gold or silver. If people hoard it, no one benefits. If people don't use it wisely, no one benefits. This is a completely different way of seeing and thinking about money. It's never a shortage of gold, silver, or money. It's always a shortage of willingness to serve on the part of the people. So think about that. It's a whole different way of seeing money. Number 7. ETs are increasing their contact efforts in hopes that we will open up a little more to their presence. They are trying to keep us healthy, whole, and able to survive our own stage of ignorance and pollution and be trusting enough to go with them if there are planetary changes that threaten human life of this kind. Number 8. As I was looking at the coming month, a set of questions kept coming up. Those questions were, why is no one showing up as a whistleblower regarding chemtrails? Why are their transponders off? How are we going to find and identify the people behind the chemtrails if the transponders are off so we won't know where they're taking off from or landing? Who's flying those planes? What air traffic controllers are giving those planes and pilots the go ahead to take off and land? Is the terrible weather everyone has been struggling with connected to chemtrails? Every time we have a beautiful day here with bright blue skies and sunshine, along come those damn planes, leaving a trail of grayish white crap. Within 24 to 48 hours, it's raining or cooler, or we have some dull, crappy weather that I don't want. How long will it take for chemtrails to end? I could borrow a famous line here. If you see something, say something. Number 9. The big reorganization that's coming will result in many of the things I saw courtesy of the little men in brown robes. And many of those changes were really very good in the long run. People are now looking seriously for community. They want to be with people of like minds, especially people who are emotionally mature. They're also looking for healing that results in real healing, not just covering up symptoms. They want the split in the timelines to hurry up because it's difficult to watch the pain, the bad choices, and the death and destruction of the old world. It will become almost impossible to live in the old world because it just won't be working. The systems that once supported us will end, forcing people to move into the new paradigm. So think about how you could help those who are struggling to make the needed changes, most of which will begin with the need to know what is really happening, to understand, to see the world differently, or to grieve what is changing. So let's be there for one another. Number 10, schools are facing good news and bad. The bad news is that schools are still struggling terribly. I see lots more closing this fall or just not reopening. The good news is that in a few distant places, schools are making needed changes. Norway is banning cell phones in the classroom. Schools that banned cell phones experienced, get this, a 60% drop in distress counseling and bullying. That's a 60% drop. That's big. There was also a big increase in grade point averages, especially math. This decision to ban cell phones is only one change, but others could be made, especially around better food. Why? Because real food also results in higher test scores and less violence in schools. This whole thing reminds me of the schools in Appleton, Wisconsin. They stopped cooking real food in their cafeteria and instead made deals with fast food chains to supply lunch. I think I talked about this once before. Part of the reason they did this was that ruling that no knives were allowed on school premises. And you can't really cook without knives. The other part of the reason was that it was cheaper. They could let go of several cooks. But soon they found themselves struggling with extreme dropout rates, low scores on everything, apathy, and fighting in the halls. After trying everything they could think of, they went back to home cooked meals. Magically, dropout rates went down, test scores went up, fighting stopped, and the kids became seriously engaged in what they were learning. When you think about it, children who are well fed with real nutrition don't tend toward violence. So having knives in schools is not a problem. And cheaper in one category often just means a higher price in another. When are we going to learn? There really are no shortcuts. As for the cell phones in the classroom, not only does this concentrate a whole lot of disruptive frequencies in a small area, but cell phones are also about as distracting as you can get. An equivalent would have been allowing us to bring TVs and radios into the classroom back in the 1950s. Number 11. I have held a very different set of expectations for AI for a very long time. different from what most people accept as artificial intelligence. I keep waiting for AI technology that is truly intelligent and nearly sentient to appear. I think the next step for us is the mapping computer. And although I haven't seen any signs of that yet, I was pleased to see that Gabriel Rene considers ChatGPT to be a step backwards in the evolution of our technology. He calls the current AI, quote, machine learning from the machine age that started with machine printing and is now dying in machine learning. The only thing that really counts when it comes to intelligence and information is whether it is offering something new. The problem with ChatGPT is that it is predictable and boring. It generates nothing new. End quote. Ouch. I have used it, ChatGPT, and I found it useful. But what good is it if all it does is regurgitate what we already know? Think of yourself as the perfect kind of real, not artificial intelligence of a highly specialized kind called a human being. Number 12. I have one further comment regarding technology and our progress as a civilization. Technocracy is not the answer, Mr. Harari. And I would point Harari's statement that humans will soon be unnecessary right back at him. Number 13. Something said by the 17th letter of the alphabet in the early messages to the people was, quote, the military is the only way. What does this mean in everyday terms? Does it mean what I at first assumed it meant? That there would be soldiers in the streets, a military style takedown of the deep state, or something of that sort? Or did it mean that there will not be Nuremberg type trials because war criminals will be picked up very quietly, taken to Guantanamo, tried by military tribunal, and executed almost immediately without public notice or fanfare? Is this why I occasionally see Twitter reports saying this or that plane is traveling or making a run to Gitmo? Is this why we haven't seen any evidence that something is happening to end the corruption? Is the military the only way, quote unquote, because the court system in the US has been captured and completely compromised? That sentence, the military is the only way, is meaning something altogether new to me lately. Keep your eyes and your mind open. Number 14. I have had two very interesting dreams in the last month. On April 1st, I dreamed that I was in Washington, D.C., and the federal courthouse was gone. All of Washington, D.C. was different. The big monuments and federal buildings were also gone. I walked through many of the offices and saw that all the people were gone as well, and it looked like they had left in a hurry. When I left the offices and went back out to the street, there were only industrial packing yards, warehouses, and repair shops to be seen. I stood there on the street wondering which way to go. I looked to the left and I saw that that entire region was black. Nothing could be seen in that direction. And then someone said to me, Night is coming. I woke up, kind of shaken. Then on May 7th, I had another dream in which a lot of people were gathered together to try to feed themselves. A lot of them, including myself, were barefoot. The atmosphere was like a party, but it had a strong air of defense, of challenge, of mystery, as well as enjoyment and freedom. I did not recognize any of the food that we were fixing because it just didn't look like food. At one point, I went outside because someone was coming to deliver supplies. Once outside, I saw that everything was totally overgrown. The trees and bushes had gone untrimmed for a very long time. The grasses and the weeds were 3 to 4 feet tall. You could not tell where anything had once been. The roads and the sidewalks were like pathways through the bush, kind of like the jungle. The supplies were being delivered by someone on foot, and as I watched them coming, I noticed how they had to carefully move through the overgrown bush, but they were following an old sidewalk. It was as if the world had fallen apart and was now being taken over by Mother Nature. Both of these dreams point to massive changes in our world. The first dream of being in Washington, D.C., and unable to find the federal courthouse points to either the collapse of the justice system or the absence of law, order, and justice, or both. The industrial packing yards, listen to that word, industrial, symbolizes that our system has gone to dust and everyone has packed up and left. The message, night is coming, indicates that we are coming to a dark night of the soul moment. These are difficult, but usually result in something much better later on. The second dream of working with barefoot people symbolizes people who are not prepared to make the journey. They're barefoot and who are trying to feed themselves. You can't go on a journey with no shoes, or you won't walk very far. The untrimmed trees and bushes that have overgrown everything symbolize the lack of discipline, untrimmed behaviors in people, as well as the failure to recognize the uncontrolled growth, overgrowth, the bubbles, and the many unnecessary things we have become reliant upon instead of maintaining basic skills and supplies. The supplies being delivered on foot by someone coming through the bush warns of what we have already heard a number of times: the breakdown of the supply chains and the difficulty of getting what you need. Heads up, at least once a week, practice making dinner with foods you are not really familiar with. Instead of running to the repair shop to get something fixed, consider taking it apart and just looking at what you see, with the idea of taking a step toward understanding how it works and maybe what went wrong. If you lose a button or that marvelous thing called a zipper, sew the button on yourself and find someone with the skill to replace the zipper. And if a bouquet of flowers will cheer you up, go outside for a walk to see what's in bloom at this time of year and bring back a little cheer for your kitchen, your dining table, or your living room. Number 15. This is something I talked about with JC, J Snip, and Woo Woo Dude just last week. but a little more has come in around this. So I'll repeat the short version of this and then the new perspective that has come to me. As I shared, it started with Kate Middleton back in March and wondering where she was. This led to the discovery that there are whole businesses out there hiring people who can pass as doubles or clones for the rich and famous, such as Kate. So the idea of doubles and clones was relatively fresh in my mind when I happened to read someone's complaint about Trump not releasing the records regarding John F. Kennedy's assassination. Trump's rebuttal to that complaint was, if you knew what I knew, you wouldn't release the JFK records either. My instant gut reaction was the question, what does Trump know? In perfect, intuitive fashion, I heard the words, he knows the truth of what happened. My own curiosity was still driving forward, and the very next thought that popped was, well, what happened? And immediately I saw that the guy in the car was not JFK, and JFK had survived. He found out about the plot to kill him, and a double was in that car. Once the double was shot, JFK had a visceral, sickening reaction that took a while for him to recover from. For all practical purposes, he no longer existed. He had no wife and children. He was no longer in power. And he had sent a man to his death via a bullet meant for himself. Kennedy's plan eventually became to contact his brother, encourage Bobby to run for president, and together they could tell the truth of what happened. But Bobby was also assassinated. That left a Marine friend to work with. Very carefully, they began gathering information that went far beyond the surface stories. Very slowly, they conceived a plan that they hoped, believed, intended would take down the military industrial complex and restore control to the people. Much later, JFK recruited his son to work with him. Together, they planned to fake the death of John Jr. This plan succeeded, and they moved forward with the next step, getting Trump to run for president in order to put in place the cover they needed to carry out the next steps. Those steps were beginning the process of awakening the people to what the deep state had in mind for them, to put indictments in place, and to plan for the continuity of government in the face of the efforts to destroy the U.S. After that conversation with JC, J Snip, and Woo Woo Dude, the following was added. Over the past 3 or 4 months, maybe even back into the end of 2023, this worry kept coming up. Originally, this worry had nothing to do with JFK. I thought he was dead and gone, and so was John Jr. The worry had to do with the 17th letter of the alphabet messages and the talk of a plan. Back at the beginning of the year, I began seeing that people were reaching their limits of tolerance and patience with our situation. The questions that kept coming up were, can people wait? Can they hold out and believe in a plan they have so little information about? Can they manage their anger? Has the plan carried things too far in an attempt to wake the people and teach them a lesson about what it takes to have a secure life? A life based on freedom in a place that honors freedom of speech, the right to carry arms to defend oneself, the right to privacy, the freedom to gather in groups, including groups that protest, the right to self determination of what will or will not be done with their body, the trust that their elected representatives will listen and respond according to what the people want, the belief that the government is acting in their best interest, the trust that they will protect and preserve life, the hope that decisions will be based on justice and not payoff money, and many other legitimate assumptions that our republic was meant to hold for us. The idea behind waking as many people as possible was that this was necessary because without the support of the people, the plan had no chance of success. But the timing of this has been tricky. The fighting between the Democratic left and the Republican right has degenerated dangerously close to vengeance. Why didn't Trump do something to fix this situation when he was in office? Well, probably because he would have been quickly, immediately taken out. But can we make it to November? Especially when I keep seeing that there is no election? How long can we hang on? Over the past months, I began to sense that hanging on in order to let the plan unfold was the biggest challenge to the success of the plan. People are angry. What is to stop rogue elements from causing trouble and making things worse? There may be some real action taking place in the background to fix the corruption, but if people don't see, hear, or know it, how will they hang on to the hope that someone is doing something? So here's something that helped me. I have held the entire Trump United States drama at arm's length for a very long time. I wanted to trust that he was doing something good. I wanted to believe that he was working to take down the cabal. I wanted to think that the whole thing we were watching and suffering through was not real and lasting, and that the guys in the white hats would win. However, through it all, I was ready to turn on a dime if it became clear that Trump was a con man. There were so many times that things could so easily be taken for or against him. And I was watching to see that we were not being led into a trap. Then, back in March, I saw a single sentence under a photo of children who had been sexually and physically abused, caged, and tortured. That single sentence was, "It was never about the elections." That sentence, those words, sparked a deep understanding that I didn't have before that. Even though I knew what was happening to the children for years, and I knew about the problems with elections and all of the other pieces. I've been watching that stuff for 45 years. I just had not put it together that way until I saw that sentence. It was never about the elections. I didn't give birth to those children who are hurting, being kidnapped, and so miserably abused. But those are our children. And by God, I will stand until I drop if that's what it takes to get some relief and set them free. So hang in there, people. It's not just about us. Number 16. In mid April, I was doing some intuitive work that involved looking at the sky event that had come up in the conversation with JC at Beyond Mystic in early April. I saw several things, all of them completely unexpected. So the first was the bubbling anger of the US population and the fact that their patience with our situation was wearing thin, and the growing possibility of an outbreak of fighting started by rogue actors that can't stand it anymore. And I already mentioned this in number 15 above. The second thing I saw was that there was going to be some kind of lockdown in which we were all told to stay inside and not go anywhere because something had been released into the air, making it difficult to breathe, or maybe it was some kind of virus or something like that. But it was being called a climate lockdown. The third thing was a series of quick flashes that started with Israel pushing for the expansion of the war. And then me wondering, what in the heck is wrong with them? And then I saw their intention was to start the war of Armageddon with Iran, followed by the apparition of Jesus and a host of angelic beings in the sky. People fell to their knees immediately. There was crying and wailing, and the apparition told the people to lay down their arms and follow him. And they did, and were thereafter completely under the control of the cabal. The apparition was a hologram or something similar, a computer generated image. But millions of people believed it was really Jesus, and they were ready to do as told. This reminded me of a conversation I had with a friend more than 10 years ago. He was originally a fundamentalist Christian, trained to become a fundamentalist preacher, but he had backed off that fundamentalism. When I complained that I could not understand Israel's insistence on fighting with everyone, he said they want Armageddon. When I asked, well, what in the world are they thinking? He replied that they believed that Armageddon was necessary for Jesus to return. When I said I found that thinking to be ridiculous, he replied that my assessment was irrelevant and that Christians around the world were supporting Israel because they seriously wanted to see Jesus return. And they seriously believed that Armageddon was needed in order to get him to return. Is Israel planning to take advantage of this belief and stage a Jesus returns sky event? Number 17. I'll close by saying the 8th of each month seems to be a real target date of some kind for a lot of people. It looks like the cabal tries to get as close to it as possible for a lot of their events. The March 22nd date on the list is an exception to that 8th of the month because that's their favorite number, 322. So let's look at the list. I've been compiling this for more than a year. February 6th, the huge earthquake in Turkey with aftershocks lasting past February 8th. July 8th, the US makes the decision to send cluster bombs to Ukraine, going against international agreements because they think they can. August 8th, the Lahaina fires on Maui occur. September 8th, the Morocco earthquake occurs. October 8th, Israel declares war on Hamas. November 8th, a timeline crossover from 3D to 4D. December 8th, Trump is arraigned in court. A president, a sitting or ex-president arraigned for the first time. And in 2024, the next month, January 3rd, we have large leftover tsunami waves hit Santa Cruz, California. January 8th, Israel flaunts international rules by targeting Al-Aqsa Hospital and Médecins Sans Frontières. February 6th, there's serious flooding and mudslides in San Diego. February 8th, we have the Putin-Carlson interview. March 8th, Biden delivers a ridiculous State of the Union speech. March 22nd, this is that exception, the Francis Scott Key Bridge is taken out. 322 is Skull and Bones. April 8th, a solar eclipse across North America with rockets named Ra, Ba, and Sekhmet fired into it. For what? Who knows? May 8th, medical sovereignty to be given to the World Economic Forum. And June 8th, we don't know yet. Another natural disaster or the sky event? We'll see. So that's it for this look-see. For those who are watching or listening for the first time, the look-see is a brief look at what's happening in our world and where the big trends are headed. Reality is not fixed. It's very dynamic and it changes according to what we're doing with our consciousness. Nothing becomes real until we make it real. We make a choice. We take some action. We put something together or take it apart. Those decisive actions are what determine our path and outcomes. And of course, once we set something in motion, it takes a lot to make a change or get it going in another direction. And that's exactly the reason for looking ahead. If we don't like the direction things are going, we can make appropriate changes in a timely way or prepare for what looks inevitable. If we see something we like, we can put some conscious attention on that outcome and help things along. So before I say any more, I'll just say it's important to look ahead and assess what's happening and where we are going so we know whether or not we need to do something different. Thank you so much for listening. And here's a thought to take with you. This comes from Publius Cyrus, a freed Syrian slave in Roman times. He says, quote, "Anyone can hold the helm when the sea is calm," end quote. So hold your helm, keep your rudder steady, and have a great month. Thank you for listening.